Hang on until the end of this video, because this is actually in two parts, but here's part one. Hey, what's poppin'? It's your boy, Z Shizzle, and it's time to talk about football and or soccer and or calcio, or whatever the hell else you happen to call it, because another club's gone bust. And yet, this one, it kind of confuses me. I need your help, basically. I need your help deciding how I feel about this. I realize that's going to be a little confusing for you because you guys tend to turn to me to decide how you feel about things or decide exactly how you don't feel about things because you just love the art of arguing, and I can respect that. But I'm going to need your help on this one because a club is dying, right? And I was made aware of this by a friend of mine, Ellis, who runs the YouTube channel Away Days. He responded to a tweet that right here, he said, really feel like the league should be doing something here at this point. People are just watching a club die and everyone can see it happen. This is referring to a club called Farsley Celtic, who parted ways with their manager, Neil Redfern, after 20 days. Now, this was particularly interesting in the way that they parted with him because there was no actual club announcement. Okay, Farsley Celtic is a team in the 6th tier of England, which is out of all the lower tiers anywhere in the world, seems to be the tier we go to the most. There's a lot of teams and just a lot of Real Housewives of England drama going on. But they never made an announcement. The first suggestion that they had, that they switched managers, it's not like they showed up without a manager at all, was because Telegraph and Argus, this news website here, received several messages from supporters this morning telling us that neither Redfern nor assistant Pav Singh were at the game over the weekend. The team instead was led by the women's manager Izzy Rhodes and youth coach Phil Lake. The club's match report online confirms that Rhodes and Lake led the side, but simply mentions that Redfern and Singh were absent without giving any further details. Look, I know it might seem weird when some of these sorts of clubs have Twitter accounts that have 1,000 followers, but if you are hiring, actually contractually hiring managers and then firing them, you probably should release some sort of public statement. Put literally any public statement into the record that has actually happened. It is amazing to me that a club that exists, especially, who am I kidding? We could find a club anywhere in the world, but a club that exists at a level that I'm talking about it, would have news articles because people are interested written about the club and then have to basically reach out to the manager himself. We got in touch with Redfern to confirm whether he had left the club, and he told us he had actually resigned on Thursday. Farsley Celtic just didn't put out any announcement, and my guess is they didn't want to deal with the shame. They didn't want to deal with the suckiness of having to announce that their manager had resigned after 20 days. Now, Neil Redfern is somebody that has managed large clubs before, multiple clubs. He's managed Leeds before. Right? If you thought you'd recognize the name, that's why. He's a guy of some importance, some relevance. And when you get a guy like that to manage your struggling club in the 6th division, one, it's a sign of how far Neil Redfern has fallen in the managerial world. But two, it is a sign that you've made some good decisions. You're going the right direction, except when somebody of that gravitas, when somebody of that football prestige then resigns, which is what leads us to somebody like Away Days saying that this club is dying. And it's not the first time that I'd seen the name Farsley Celtic. So I decided to dust off the old investigative mitts here, then go on some light digging, which is, let's be honest, the highest level of digging we're going to do on this channel. But that's how I end up on Telegraph and Argus, right? But there are articles all over the place about all this sort of stuff. And you very quickly unfurl a world of drama. But I'm going to stop before I get into it because there's something striking to me. This is basically the highest in the league setting, the league system that Farsley Celtic has ever been. Ever. The 6th division of England is the best they've ever done. They got up just a couple of years ago. All you got to do is head to the Wikipedia and you see that they earned this promotion to the National League North at the end of the 2019 season. This is Farsley Celtic at its absolute best. And just when you look at that objectively, it's kind of amazing that we're talking about, the death of the club here, when this club has existed for 100 years. Over 100 years, well over 100 years. It was founded in 1908. It folded in 2010, but was then reformed in 2015. So it's got a history, and it's played over 100 seasons as a club. It's already folded one time. And all of these seasons that occurred, yeah, they were never really a club of any note at all. It's just fascinating to me. Like, I understand the financial logistics, the physical logistics of how a club could be in danger of folding. I just find it fascinating that somehow ascending causes so many problems. Getting promoted, I guess, is not necessarily always a good thing. You'd rather just be kind of a local mom and pop, lower level semi-pro club, or maybe even fully amateur club, just knocking about in the Yorkshire leagues. All of a sudden you're playing in the National League North, and shit's gone sideways. It's hit the fan. But Farsley Celtic is not one of the bigger clubs in the National League North. They're not a team that you would have expected to compete for promotion. And as such, they're one of the bottom teams in the league, but it's not like they're anchors away. They're like 22nd. Okay, obviously the time, who am I kidding? The turnaround of these videos is like 5 seconds. But the time you're watching this will probably be 21st, 22nd of the league. They're not bottom, right? They're having a decent time. They're doing okay. I guess if both these teams win, they could be last, but let's be honest. They're the two bottom teams in the league, and they're both probably not going to win. But what's clear is that Farsley Celtic is not the runaway worst team in the league either. So again, what leads to this? Well, a lot of the weird articles are coming out probably have to do with the chairman, the owner. But I'm a little torn on this, because you ever wonder into a situation, like I mentioned I was torn on it earlier, but this is one of those situations where I think everybody's in the wrong. I think everybody's probably doing something wrong. And when I say everybody, I mean the fans and their expectations and the chairman here, just everybody. The groundsman's probably doing something wrong. In fact, the groundsman is definitely doing something wrong, and that's kind of a part of this. Now, earlier this year, this is an article that dropped on the 8th of November. There was a vote of no confidence from the supporters club for Farsley Celtic. Right, I can't imagine it's too many people. And at one point in one of these articles, right, there is a quote. They're a supporters group who pay their membership fees, and it's about the same dozen or so people who've been posting negative content about us on social media for months. This comes from Senior Barthorpe. That's the guy, Paul Barthorpe. As you can see his name here in an article about his car being vandalized on October 15th. Okay, all of this has to do, at least as far as I can tell, with the fact that Farsley Celtic has not played an actual home match all year. And this, at its core, is like the number one reason people are looking at this club thinking that it's dying. See, Farsley Celtic's field just wasn't up to par, right? And they decided, Paul Barthorpe, I think it's Barthorpe, the owner of this club, decided that they were going to get a new field because the old field, well, it just wasn't up to standard. The club's been playing its home matches like 60 miles away from home. This has led to the players of the club complaining about, look, like we didn't sign up to play freaking 46 away games. You're not getting paid enough to play 46 away games. You still get to spend a lot of time with friends and family and go home. And obviously some people choose to play for clubs that are a couple of hours away, but they choose that. If you were signed for a club like Farsley Celtic and you live 5 minutes down the street from the ground, you are not expecting to have to drive 60 miles each way to be able to play one match. And Barthorpe has promised that he's going to get a new artificial surface installed. In fact, in this article where he's talking about the same dozen people roasting him on social media, he said the only issue is the artificial pitch, which will be getting laid down, and it's something I'll happily discuss with him, and so on and so on and so. This was in early November. It was supposed to have happened at this point when the vote of no confidence came in. It still hasn't happened. Farsley Celtic is just playing everywhere but their actual stadium. Then, of course, there's the matter of the fact that the players are not getting paid, or they weren't getting paid. This is one of those things where the first time you see the headline, you go, wow, the players aren't getting paid at all. And sometimes it's like that team in Romania where they literally never get paid. But then Barthorpe comes back and says, they were paid late in my absence due to the passing of my partner. It has usually been 1 to 2 days late, but always before match day. Basically, he said he was taking a grieving period after the passing of his partner, and the payments were slightly delayed, but they're not owed stacked on weeks worth of wages. The payments are just coming in a little late. Now, obviously, legally, the payments shouldn't be coming in late at all. But if all of this checks out, if all of this is true and all of it makes sense, you kind of understand where Barthorpe's coming from here, where you're literally on leave for grieving time for something horrible that's happened in your life, and then you have to, you can understand how the administrative efforts of the club fall behind a little bit in that case, as long as this is true that they were only behind by a day or two. Now, the players said that they tried to meet with Barthorpe, and then one time it was right after the passing of his partner, so he wasn't able to do it. And then the other time he couldn't go because it was after my vehicle had been damaged by fans at an away game, which of course brings us back to this wonderful headline where fans, I'm assuming the same dozen people that Barthorpe was talking about, vandalized his car in such a way that he couldn't actually drive to meet the players because he did not have a vehicle. All of this led up to the vote of no confidence, which there were multiple BBC articles about, and this really sums up the entire story because the fans, who obviously haven't carried themselves wonderfully, right? We're vandalizing cars here, right? But too many issues pertinent to the future well-being of the club aren't being addressed. The view of the supporters club is that they would prefer the chairman to stand down and the club to be sold. So this would be players aren't getting paid exactly on time. Every match the entire season has been played on the road, which is just absolutely psychotic and just objectively terrible management of anything. Because, look, if you're trying to put down an artificial field, which they are trying to do, there's no way you should be playing this many matches on the road. It just can't possibly take that long. But on the flip side, Barthorpe says we are committed to this club and this project and have backed this up with words, times, action, and significant investment over the years. He also claims that the club is that Mr. Barthorpe has covered the club's operating costs of up to £15,000 a week, and yet has been subjected to constant ridicule, personal abuse, threats, and even had his property criminally damaged, with the value of the damage running into the thousands. And look, I'm going to level with you for a second. I'm all anti-owner. I'm as much anti-owner as the next guy, right? There are a lot of terrible owners in football that crash their clubs, from Peter Lim in Spain to whatever the hell's happening at Reading in England, right? There are a lot of terrible owners that crash clubs, hire the wrong people, and do a lot of terrible things. And Barthorpe has done a lot of dumb things, right? He has made the team play every match on the road and this and that. But I think there is one thing that gets really ridiculous when it comes to fan reactions to owners, and that is failing to understand what exactly to get mad about, right? Like, clearly the thing to get mad at Barthorpe about is horrible mismanagement of the managerial staff, of the field situation, not paying players on time. But it's not like this guy lacks the intestinal fortitude to invest. To be perfectly honest, a lot of these clubs in the 6th and the 5th tier of England in particular lose a shitload of money. They all lose money. They're all gambling on promotion, and it's a losing bet because basically almost nobody gets promoted from these leagues. They just don't make a lot of money because there isn't a lot of money to be made in the 6th tier. £15,000 a week is a lot. Obviously, I have no idea if that's true, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I play Football Manager all the time, and all of these clubs are losing money. And the only way you're able to keep these clubs afloat is these rich guys with egos that just want to own a football club and apparently want to pay £15,000 a week in order to do it. There are a lot of things to be mad at Barthorpe about because he's clearly not very good at some of the administrative parts of this, right? But you could do a lot worse than an owner that's willing to spend this amount of money in order to keep the club afloat in the first place. You understand what I'm saying? There is a fan expectation that, it's not your money, so you expect the owners to just have unlimited pockets so that they're able to spend that money. But if you're in the 6th tier, they don't have unlimited money. Or these owners don't. It's just like some dude that is significantly wealthier than most people. But, these aren't the billionaire owners that you have in the Premier League. So when they're talking about £15,000 a week, I assume that hurts a lot. It was just something that was striking to me. And it does sound like in these statements that Barthorpe feels like it's this kind of thankless task, and you can't blame him for kind of burning out on this. But I am not siding against the fans here necessarily. Because there's just a hilarious quote at the end of this. In response to allegations that players and staff had been paid late, the club said it would be under a league embargo if that were the case, which we are not. Farsley had been under a league embargo from the National League for non-compliance with league financial regulations, which the club said it had now addressed. So is the club in danger of dying? Maybe. If they can't actually figure out this, like the field situation. If you don't have a solid, good, healthy field to play on and you have to play all your matches on the road, nobody in their right mind would want to sign for that club and actually go through that in the first place. Just also, if you can't keep a manager for more than 20 days, you're probably not going to have a very good time. And you can see why I asked for help here, because there is a lot of incompetence going on with the ownership of the club, in which case you're with the fans and you're like, obviously you want this guy out. But then at the same time, if you want to try and expedite the death of your club, getting rid of the guy that may be spending up to £15,000 a week to cover all the gaps and maybe spending up to £1 million in order to put the new ground in, even if he happens to be doing it incredibly slowly, that might make the death of your club even faster in the long run. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and sometimes you're just in a situation where everything sucks, and that's what's going on with Farsley Celtic. Now for part two. As the video was about to come out, it became apparent that Paul Barnthorpe was actually resigning from the club. Like literally the day after I made the video, he was resigning from the club. I learned this from Away Days, who was tweeting, like quote tweeting the fact that he was resigning, and the statement in which he announced he was resigning was actually quite sad, right? He detailed the fact that he failed at being able to get the field done, and that there were all these different disasters. It also seemed to try and highlight the fact that there was this campaign against him, and talks about how he ended up in the hospital multiple times with stress-related heart stuff. And that it all sounds very sad and very touching until you realize that he is somebody that is apparently proven to at least exhibit the proclivity to lie, right? Because I've never met Paul Barnthorpe, but I have met Ellis Patton. He's a wonderful guy, right? He makes excellent YouTube videos on the Away Days channel. And apparently, Paul Barnthorpe claimed that he offered to meet Ellis, who made, I didn't know this at the time, but apparently Away Days made a video about Farsley Celtic. He said, I offered to meet with Ellis in Grantham or Peterborough to both explain my points of view and to offer the club for sale to him or anybody who knows he knows might be interested. So far, I've not received a reply. And then he said, to be clear, I've received zero correspondence from him. My email is in my profile bio. Please reach out. I would love to interview you on the channel. So as much as when I read Paul Barnthorpe talk about the situation, and if you read this statement, it is very sad. Right, it is very much like all of these things were kind of conspiring against me, and then he drops an absolutely gorgeous line. This is categorically not me blaming anyone, when everything else in this is him blaming other people for what's happened, which, if he is 100% right in all of the things that he is saying, is fair. There's nothing wrong with blaming other people for something going wrong. He's claiming the contractor they hired to start to remodel their field basically blew the date off 3 times, and that a social media campaign led by, and hold on, I love this, I gotta find it. Engaging a blogger to post a story on YouTube, just an excellent way to describe Away Days there. Like this coordinated social media campaign in order to try and torpedo this well-meaning owner and everything, except for this. This is the only thing that you can basically verify in the entire story, because you know 100% that, one, I know Ellis personally, and he's a wonderful guy. 2, if he had the opportunity to interview Paul on his YouTube channel, he would have absolutely done it. Even if Ellis wasn't a great guy, which he is, it's amazing content. There is 0% chance that he would want to turn that down. Like literally 0. There is not a single logical incentive why he would want to do that. But the club has now been handed over to 6 members of the board. Paul Barnthorpe, who took over the club in 2019, started the statement by saying that the club, this is fairly harsh, right? We don't have the fan base, the match attendances, the income, or the revenue streams, or enough volunteers to put together a robust infrastructure to support an operation to run a club at this level. Quite honestly, if you've been at this for 6 years in this league, you probably should have come to that realization a lot earlier if it was true. And I'm not surprised you don't have the match attendances, considering every home match is 60 to 70 miles away at this point. But Paul Barnthorpe has called it quits. Away Days played a small role in that. Members of the board have taken over to run the club, and we're going to find out if Farsley Celtic can find its way back to an economically viable position, or maybe if getting relegated down a peg or two would be helpful financially, because it is possible, because I started this video talking about it, that you can be at too high a level for your sustainable success, and maybe they just need to drop down a little bit for the safety and financial sanctity of the club. Or maybe we're about to see one of the all-time turnaround stories. Let's see.